Welcome, everyone. All right, let's just dive right into this. Today's explainer is a deep dive into one of history's absolute darkest, most bewildering artifacts. We are looking at a text so infamous, so shrouded in mystery, that it has literally been locked away in an airtight case to protect the world from it. Officially, it's known as the Codex Gigas, but, you might actually know it by its much more sinister name, the Devil's Bible.
First, you really have to consider the sheer, impossible physical scale of what we're actually dealing with here. We aren't talking about your standard paperback book. The Codex Gigas is 3 feet long, over 2 feet wide, 9 inches thick, and weighs a staggering 75 kilograms. That's 644 massive pages. And the central hook of this entire historical mystery? Well, legend dictates that this massive, impossibly heavy book was completely written and illustrated in a single night.
All right, Part 1, One Night and an Impossible Deal. We're looking at its origin in 1212 Bohemia. So, our story starts in the Polegis monastery with a monk named Herman the Recluse. Now, Herman had broken several sacred vows, but the final straw was actually falling in love with a woman. For this, the monastery sentenced him to a truly horrific fate. He was to be walled up alive. Completely desperate, Herman begged for mercy. The monks, kind of conflicted, offered him this impossible ultimatum to spare his life. He had to write a book containing all of human knowledge, and he had to do the whole shebang in exactly 12 hours, locked away in a basement overnight.
The very next morning, the monks opened that basement door fully expecting to drag Herman out to his execution. But instead, they found him just sitting there, right next to the completed 75-kilogram Codex Gigas. Completely stunned, the monks asked how a single man could possibly achieve the impossible. Herman just calmly admitted he prayed for help. When the monks asked how God could answer the prayers of a condemned sinner, Herman delivered this absolutely chilling quote. He looked at them and said, "Who said I prayed to God?" Legend says that the exact moment Herman stepped out of that basement a free man, he dropped dead.
Moving on to Section 2, the physical mysteries of a demonic book. Let's look at the actual physical evidence.
Okay, so we have to impartially contrast the historical reality of the situation with the physical book that exists today. How does a poor monk, locked in a basement for one single night, produce 644 pages made from premium donkey skin vellum? That is an insanely expensive material that equates to millions of dollars today. And furthermore, the text is written using rare red, blue, green, and golden inks. Those were pigments that literally only royalty could afford at the time. How in the world did a condemned monk get his hands on this?
And then, consider this next physical anomaly. Just think about your own handwriting for a second. If you sit down and write for hours, your hand cramps up, right? Your letters get sloppy, you start making mistakes. But this book exhibits perfect symmetry. From the very first page all the way to the 644th, the handwriting is totally flawless. There's zero inconsistency, there's no variation in ink pressure, and absolutely no signs of human fatigue whatsoever. It just completely defies human biology.
Which brings us to the absolute most infamous part of the text, page 580. This page features a massive, truly terrifying portrait of the devil himself. The prevailing legend here, and honestly a core reason for the book's extremely dark reputation, is that the red ink used in this drawing is the devil's own blood, essentially physically binding him to the text. It's widely believed to carry a curse. The story goes that those who disrespect the book are brought to utter ruin, while those who honor it are granted dark favors.
Now, this dark reputation actively shaped the book's early timeline. Back in 1212, right after Herman's death, the original monastery kept the book locked away purely out of fear. But suddenly, they suffered mysterious deaths and extreme poverty, eventually going totally bankrupt. So, to survive, in 1295, they actually pawned the book off to Sedlic Abbey. It eventually made its way to the Brevnov Monastery, and interestingly enough, Brevnov didn't hide the book at all. They proudly displayed it. Consequently, tourists flocked to see it, and from 1295 to 1477, that monastery accumulated incredible wealth. The curse, it seems, definitely rewarded respect.
Let's move to Section 3, the horrifying end of King Rudolph and the King's Madness.
So, in 1594, the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who already had a bit of a penchant for the occult, barred the book. He became dangerously fixated on page 290 and that demonic portrait on page 580. By 1596, his psychological descent had completely escalated. He was claiming that demonic voices were keeping him awake. He isolated himself, totally neglecting his kingdom and his family. The deterioration was so incredibly severe that by 1611, the emperor of one of the world's absolute greatest powers had literally forgotten his own name. He was ultimately deposed by his own family and died in miserable poverty.
And the alleged curse? Yeah, it outlived the king himself. Without Rudolph's leadership, the empire was incredibly vulnerable. Fast forward to 1648. Following the devastating 30 Years' War, the defeated kingdom was essentially sacked. The invading Swedish Empire looted their treasures, including the library, taking the Devil's Bible all the way back to Stockholm.
Which takes us to Section 4, Stockholm's bloody history at the Swedish Royal Library.
Picture this. It's 2 a.m. in the year 1683. An older guard named Lars is patrolling the completely locked, totally silent Royal Library. The only sound in the whole place is the tap-tap of his shoes. Suddenly, he hears this distinct rustling of heavy leather. He follows the sound right to the Codex Gigas. The massive pages are turning entirely on their own. He looks down and becomes completely hypnotized by the devil's portrait on page 580. He leans in closer, and suddenly the 75-kilogram book violently snaps shut on its own.
The next morning, Lars was just gone. His lantern was left sitting on the floor, and when the other guards pried open the Codex Gigas, they found fresh, sticky blood smeared right between the pages. To protect their reputation and ensure that guards would actually continue to work there, the library allegedly covered up this horrifying incident, along with several other mysterious disappearances over the coming years.
And finally, Section 5, The Mysterious Fire and the Missing Pages, our final mystery.
On the night of May 7, 1697, a massive, catastrophic fire broke out in the castle library. And this is crazy. While thousands of precious library books were completely reduced to ashes, the Codex Gigas, sitting right dead in the middle of the inferno, remained miraculously untouched by the flames. It was honestly as if something supernatural was actively shielding it. Now, to save the book from the collapsing building, librarians literally hurled the massive tome out of a high window. But when it was finally recovered, 12 pages had mysteriously vanished. Now, the prevailing theory among scholars isn't just that they burned up. Because of the demonic nature of the book, it is widely believed that priests deliberately ripped out those 12 pages under the cover of the chaos. Why? Because they supposedly contained dark, forbidden rituals specifically designed to physically summon the devil. They wanted to ensure those incantations could never, ever be used.
Well, that brings us right to the present day. Today, the Codex Gigas is kept under strict lock and key. It is secured inside an airtight case at the National Library of Sweden to prevent anyone from tampering with it, or, perhaps to prevent the book from tampering with us. Interestingly enough, though, for those of you who can actually read Latin, the library has made a full digital version of the book available online.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought straight from our source material for today's explainer. You've seen the impossible physical evidence. You've heard the history of madness, blood, and fire that seems to just follow this text around. After knowing all this, would you dare to read this book? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you guys next time.